I know that Bigfoot exists because I've seen more than one of them. But what about all the Bigfoot skeptics out there? In this video, I'm going to logically examine each and every point that Bigfoot skeptics raise, and I'm going to logically debunk every single one of them. So the first point that Bigfoot skeptics typically raise is the lack of officially documented physical evidence for these creatures. So things like fossils, bodies, bones, DNA, that sort of thing. Fossilization, first of all, is an extremely rare process, especially for animals living in forested or wet environments where conditions are poor for preservation. Many known animals, like gorillas, bears, even cougars, have relatively sparse fossil records in their current habitats. Decomposition also happens quickly in many environments. In dense, remote forests, for instance, carcasses can quickly decompose because of scavengers or environmental factors, leaving very little behind. It's common for large predators like bears, for instance, to die in the wild without leaving easily recoverable remains of any sort. Also, DNA evidence is difficult overall. While DNA samples have occasionally been recovered for Bigfoot or Sasquatch, they're often inconclusive or partially contaminated. However, some unidentified hair samples have shown characteristics consistent with an unknown non-human primate, though these haven't been definitive enough to officially be declared Bigfoot, although that's very much open for debate. The definitiveness of the samples. The second point that Bigfoot skeptics often raise is that no Bigfoot creature has yet been captured or killed, at least according to official records. First of all, we've got the elusive nature of these creatures. Many known species remain undiscovered or poorly documented, despite being large or dangerous. The coelacanth fish, for example, the giant squid, the okapi. These are some examples of large, elusive creatures that evaded detection for literal centuries. There's also the human avoidance factor. Bigfoot, if real, may be highly intelligent and adept at avoiding human contact. In fact, that's quite likely, much like known primates or many species of large cat in the wild. Given the vast wilderness areas where these creatures are sighted, and by vast, I mean something to the tune of 300 million untouched acres of wilderness in North America alone, it's plausible that these creatures simply avoid populated areas for the most part. Also, it's important to keep in mind that dead bodies of any species are rarely found. Most wild animals die in remote locations, far from human populations, and their remains are often scavenged or decay rapidly. Some species are actually even known to bury their dead. For example, it's uncommon to find remains of bears or other mammals in the forest, despite their known, well-documented, scientifically acknowledged existence. The third point skeptics raise is hoaxes and faked evidence. They say that many sightings, photos, and videos have been proven to be hoaxes, discrediting the entire phenomenon. But that's flawed thinking, because not all of these occurrences can possibly be hoaxes. While hoaxes exist, obviously, the sheer volume and consistency of sightings over hundreds of years, and we're talking about tens of thousands of documented sightings, suggests that something very real is being observed. Many reports come from credible witnesses, doctors, lawyers, judges, law enforcement officers, park rangers, and even scientists. Also, authentic evidence does exist. Some physical evidence, such as detailed fingerprints with dermal ridges, footprints that have been verified by experts to be real, and other things, are very difficult to fake convincingly. Moreover, sound recordings and other forms of sensory evidence, like the well-known Ohio Howl recording or Ron Moorhead's Sierra sounds, have been harder to dismiss outright. One reason for that is that audio is inherently a lot harder to fake than video, as any audio expert will tell you. The next point Sasquatch skeptics raise is the lack of clear, high-quality photographic or video evidence. They're often asking questions like, in the age of smartphones and digital cameras, why is there such a lack of clear, high-quality Bigfoot visuals? It seems suspicious. And honestly, that's a fair point. But first of all, you have to realize that the conditions are often poor. Many Bigfoot sightings occur in dense forests during low-light conditions, making clear photography difficult. Any sort of wildlife photographer will often struggle to capture high-quality images of even known species in similar environments. As someone who has dabbled in wildlife photography professionally in the past and wildlife videography, I can tell you that it's not nearly as easy as it may theoretically seem. Also, despite our advancements in technology, you have to keep in mind that technology is still limited. Even with our modern technology, capturing a fast-moving, extremely elusive animal that may have human-like intelligence is challenging. Most wildlife photography involves extensive planning and only brief encounters, like those with Bigfoot, and often time isn't provided for ideal setups or captures. And you also need to remember that some videos do show compelling evidence. Footage such as the Patterson-Gimlin film from 1967 has yet to be conclusively debunked in almost 60 years, and I've actually done a video specifically about the Patterson-Gimlin film laying out all the evidence, in my opinion proof beyond a reasonable doubt, why it's an authentic Bigfoot creature, not a man in a suit. So it's not like these pieces of visual evidence don't exist, with experts noting anatomical details that would be difficult to fake, if not impossible. The next skeptical point is inconsistent sightings and descriptions. Many skeptics argue that reports of Bigfoot vary in terms of size, color, behavior, region, and this casts doubt, in their opinion, on the creature's existence. Now, species variation is the main counter-argument here. If Bigfoot is a real species, regional variations are to be expected, much like how bears, wolves, and other animals vary in size and coloration depending on their environment and geographical region. There's also witness perception. Human witnesses often report variations in details due to factors like lighting, distance, fear and stress, that sort of thing. It's very common. This doesn't negate the overall consistency of reports describing a large bipedal hair-covered creature resembling both a human and a primate, however. There's also similarity to other animals. Many known animals exhibit significant variation from one individual to the next. For example, gorillas and chimpanzees have distinct subspecies with differing physical characteristics. This is well known and has been for decades. The next skeptical point on Bigfoot is that it's impossible to hide a large breeding population, at least in the minds of skeptics. To sustain a species, they say, a significant breeding population would be necessary, making it highly unlikely that no one has captured or extensively documented these creatures. But that's flawed logic for a few reasons. First of all, sparse population. Bigfoot sightings, although common overall over the last 50 to 100 years, still suggest that the species might have a very low population density, much like many other known apex predators in their given environments, which are difficult to spot due to their elusive nature. Large animals like tigers or cougars, for instance, are rarely seen in the wild, despite known populations. There's also the large remote area factor. The areas where Bigfoot is reported, like the Pacific Northwest, Canada, and remote forested regions, are vast and sparsely populated, providing ample space for a species to avoid detection. I think I mentioned before that there's literally 300 million acres of untouched wilderness in North America alone, to say nothing of the many other countries around the world where Bigfoot-like creatures are reported. Then there's comparisons to other species. Large animals like the giant panda, for instance, were considered mythical until they were officially discovered in the early 20th century. That's remarkably recent. Even more recent is the saola, which was thought to be a mythical creature until it was officially classified and discovered in the early 1990s. Think about how recent that is, that we discovered a large, previously thought to be mythical mammal. It's quite possible that Bigfoot has similarly evaded detection due to the remoteness of its habitat and above-average intelligence. Another skeptical point is that all these Bigfoot reports we hear are simple misidentifications of other species. Skeptics say that most Bigfoot sightings are likely other creatures, known animals like bears simply standing on their hind legs. But this breaks down pretty quickly because, first of all, we have many experienced witnesses. Many Bigfoot sightings come from experienced people like outdoorsmen and outdoorswomen, hunters and scientists who are familiar with local wildlife and would be very unlikely to mistake a bear for something else. We also have distinctive behavior and movement. Bigfoot is often reported walking upright with a human-like gait, not completely human-like, but a lot more human-like than any known animal, something that bears or other animals cannot possibly replicate convincingly, because they're just not built to do it. Additionally, there are reports of vocalizations and behaviors clearly not consistent with known animals, and this has been studied time and time again by biologists, anthropologists, and audio experts. Then there's footprint evidence. Bigfoot footprints often show features like dermal ridges, and this is a detail that's extremely difficult to fake and not present in any known North American animal species. The next skeptical point against Bigfoot is that in skeptics' opinions, there is no significant ecological impact from these creatures. They say that a large omnivorous or carnivorous species like Bigfoot would have a noticeable impact on its ecosystem, but there's no evidence of this. But here's the thing. If Bigfoot exists, it's likely to have a very low population density, as I already mentioned, making its ecological impact minimal. There's also significant evidence that these creatures are migratory, further diminishing their environmental impact. Apex predators like cougars or wolves often have large ranges and small overall populations, limiting their visibility and impact. These creatures also likely have an unusual diet and behavior. Bigfoots may have an omnivorous diet, subsisting on vegetation, small animals, or even scavenging, which would further reduce their environmental impact. This adaptability would make the ecological footprint of these creatures much harder to trace. Then we have comparable species. Animals like wolverines or mountain lions, despite being large and elusive, have minimal ecological impact themselves in terms of visible signs like tracks or kills. And finally, skeptics often raise the point of cultural myths and folklore. They say that Bigfoot stories are rooted in indigenous myths and folklore, suggesting that it's more of a cultural phenomenon than a biological reality. There are several problems with this. The first one being that we have consistent descriptions across cultures. While Bigfoot has been part of indigenous folklore for centuries, and this is well known, descriptions of very similar creatures appear across multiple cultures worldwide, from the Yeti in the Himalayas to the Yowie in Australia and the Yeren in China. This consistency suggests that there may well be a common basis for these sightings beyond myth. Otherwise, you'd expect these quote-unquote mythical creatures to be wildly different from one culture to the next. We also have the fact that folklore is often rooted in reality. Many creatures, such as the Komodo dragon or the okapi, which we already mentioned, were once considered mere legends, until they were proven to exist and scientifically classified. Folklore often has roots in real phenomena that are later substantiated by science, and this is well known. Now, will this case silence Bigfoot skeptics forever? Probably not, but not because of a lack of logic or strength in the case made. More because Bigfoot skeptics tend to be extremely emotionally invested in their skepticism, finding it understandably hard to swallow the idea of a non-human primate walking bipedally around the woods of North America and elsewhere. But that's all right. Hopefully this will at least give them something to think about. Thanks so much for watching. I appreciate it. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a like, share, and subscribe to this channel, and I'll see you next time.